Brain Briefs by Art Markman and Bob Duke. Okay, Chapter 7. Do schools teach the way children learn? Most of us humans require as many as 15 to 20 years of training before we're ready to live on our own and contribute to society, and culture provides structure that allows us to learn about and successfully navigate the environments we are likely to encounter. For example, when babies are born, they do not recognize that heights are dangerous, perhaps because infants don't yet move around on their own. Given that infants are generally carried around by other people and more than a few feet off the ground, an innate fear of heights would lead most infants to live in a state of terror much of the time. Playful parents hoist babies into the air every day, eliciting squeals of delight from their children. Heights, no problem. But as baby, but as babies learn to crawl, their world becomes a different place. Now it's important to learn that heights are potentially now it's important that to learn that heights are potentially dangerous. How how do interpret how do intrepid infants come to recognize the danger in a flight of stairs? A classic test of the ability to recognize heights employs a device called visual cliff, a two-tiered structure with a ledge and a drop-off of several feet that is covered by a sheet of glass. Skyscrapers such as Willis Tower in Chicago and even Grand Canyon now has visual cliff for adults. When infants first learn to crawl, they confidently move themselves over the cliff and onto the glass. But within months after learning to crawl, they seem to figure out the potential danger. They crawl to the edge, look over and back away. When infants get an inkling that heights could be a problem, they look to adults in a process known as social referencing for a signal that will help them figure out what to do. In one set of studies with the visual cliff, moms were seated at far end of the device, which is past the drop, and their babies were placed on the upper tier and allowed to crawl around. When they got to the ledge, they looked at their mom for guidance. Some moms were instructed to show fears as the infants approached the visual cliff. Their babies backed away from the ledge. Other moms were instructed to smile and show encouragement, and their babies continued to crawl past the ledge and onto the glass. In Western societies, parents and other adults tend to interact with babies and toddlers directly, and children relish the attention. It's interesting to note that this behavior is not universal. In cultures where adults engage in less child-directed behavior, children learn mostly from observation and from their interaction with older children. In this culture, children may watch an adult perform a task and then perform a version of it on their own, perhaps with toys. Okay. The notion that all members of a society should possess a shared base of knowledge and that this knowledge should be conveyed not only by parents, siblings, and peers, but also by institutions of learning, led to the development of schools, which are, in a sense, learning factories. The success of Western industrialization Western industrialization furthered the perception that we could systemize learning and instill the confidence that we could scale up teaching, serving large groups of children, learning together in classrooms, school buildings, and grade level. In every factory, efficiency is a priority. And if we think of children as empty vessels to be filled with knowledge and skills, then the structure of typical schools seems like a pretty good idea. But children aren't empty vessels who simply need some knowledge and skill poured in. They are curious creatures with ideas, experience, emotion, aspiration, and physical bodies that move, all of which plays a role in what they remember and what they learn. Traditional models of schooling are based on the assumption that the best way to fill those ready brains is by talking and showing and explaining, employing all kinds of media, books, lectures, film, and recordings to provide information, but attempts to maximize efficiency in conveying content to a large group of learners often omit the essential component of learning that engages children's natural enthusiasm for discovery. Having children sit in rows and listen to as wise adults explain things to them ignores two important aspects of young human being. They are social and they move. When most of the interaction in classroom are between students and the teacher, students miss out on all there is to learn from interacting with one another. What might at first seem like pointless play is actually the process through which all of us learn deeply. Remembering and reciting are not sufficient. Social interactions among learners provide occasion for productive, collaborative, motivating modeling. Though the messiness of these kinds of interaction seems inefficient, it is essential. Sitting quietly and still for long stretches of time is a not natural childhood activity. In fact, many teachers spend much of their time helping children overcome their inherent desire to move and do things. An orderly classroom is understandably appealing, but inhibits crucial components of effective learning. It seems odd that our current concern over the sedentary nature of childhood in America is juxtaposed with school days dominated by sitting with intermittent physical activity in PE and at recess defined as breaks from the work hard of learning. Physical activity should be central to the hard work of learning, but knowledge doesn't live only in the head. The field of embodied cognition teaches us that we understand most concepts, at least in part, by interacting with them. In science, it is valuable for students to play with a pendulum, changing its length and weight to see how that affects its movement. And math instruction has a long history of using blocks and other manipulative to help children learn place value, which can be quite helpful when teachers are clear about making the connection between the children's activity and the key math concept being presented. This isn't a new idea. John Dewey, Alfred North Whitehead, and others were harping about the importance of physical movement for conceptual learning over a century ago. We couldn't conclude this essay without talking about tests, a near ubiquitous feature of formal education and a topic of ongoing public debate. There are many good reasons to evaluate what learners know and what they can do with what they know, and research suggests that testing really does aid learning, both because students have to study for the test and also because the test itself helps the brain to recognize the information it encountered before will be needed again. That said, if avoiding the threat of doing poorly on tests is the primary motivator of learning, we've got a problem. Many kids begin to feel as if the whole point of school is to remember things long enough to do well on the next test. Many kids who were deemed unmotivated in school will spend hours playing video games, learning the guitar, or honing their ability to rap. It's not that they lack motivation, they simply lack motivation to do what the schools are asking them to do. Learners in education have begun to move away from the sit and listen model and toward the move and do model of learning. not because it's becoming trendy, but because of its effectiveness in achieving the goals that the schools are designed to satisfy, developing the minds of curious, engaged, happy learners. Both of us play instrument, and we know that a key in our motivation to practice is the moment to moment evidence of our progress or lack of progress. The same is true for any motivated learner who's learning to ride a bike, build a sandcastle, or swing a baseball bat. Recognizing the relationship between the effort you expend and the return on the investment is a powerful motivator and a recipe for experiencing the joy of accomplishment. When your only motivator is avoiding failure on tests, then the best feeling you can experience is the one relief. Who struggling with surmountable challenge and knotty problems and then conquering them leads to a different kind of emotion. Wow, that propels you forward to the next challenge. When kids have frequent opportunities to demonstrate to themselves what they know and how the things they have learned allow them to meet challenge and solve problems, they begin to appreciate that their learning matters beyond gold star and good grades. People are natural learners, but not all learning environments capitalize on our human potential. In some way, we need to make our schools less efficient in order to make them more efficient. So, real learning is a must. Embrace the model. Okay, thank you.